Chapter 1. Rafi Francisco really stepped in it this time. She was lost and alone in the middle of the Caribbean jungle, wearing an ill-fitting shirt that clung to all her sweat-filled crevices. There was an incessant bug, big as a bullet, buzzing into her neck, lured there by her ridiculously poor choice of candy-scented body spray. Her backpack seemed to be getting heavier and banged into her lower back with every step she took. She was thirsty, and tired, and scared, and this colossal mistake of a trip had cost her $2,000, aka her life's savings. Yes, Rafi Francisco had definitely stepped in it, but literally. She knew the moment she did it, feeling her shoes slide forward on the sticky stuff. Rafi winced as she lifted up her foot to examine the damage. She didn't want to think of the kind of animal that would make such a massive mess. With her luck, it was still close by and watching her through the trees, ready to charge. 30 minutes on this island had already proven soul crushing. She scraped the bottom of her shoe across the base of the nearest tree trunk until most of the gunk was off. A few hours ago, Rafi had been on an air-conditioned plane, eating her third bag of free chips. Now, she was here, regretting her life choices. Instinctively, she took her phone out of her pocket, but then remembered there was no service here. There was something so silly about a phone in a jungle, like holding a bouquet of flowers in a blizzard, like things that belonged to two different worlds trying to coexist. And while Rafi had been here only a short while, a lot of things already about this place felt off. Rafi had flown to the island of Exuma with a plane full of concert goers, and then they'd all subsequently boarded a ship that had taken them on a half-hour-long journey here. The island was big enough to take days to fully explore, but still small enough that Rafi couldn't find it on a map. She thought she had once and studied it long and hard before realizing it was a blueberry muffin crumb. But what was really strange was that when they all got off the ship, there was no one to greet them, not an organizer or owner or even a volunteer. Which was how Rafi had ended up in the jungle, looking for anyone who could tell her where to find her luggage. 35 minutes in, and Rafi had the sinking feeling that she and everyone else here had been duped. But the biggest tell was the island itself. It looked nothing like it had in the promo video. Fly Fest had gone from a rumor to viral fact to the hottest ticket in town in a matter of days. But it really came alive in people's minds when the promo video dropped. Sandy beaches, jet skis, and supermodels. And of course, there was the now legendary voiceover that played over the stunning imagery. Fly Fest is a question, an answer, an enigma, a messiah, a sandal. It is all and it is nothing. It will push the limits of boundlessness into an endless quest to enlighten fulfillment you didn't even know you desired, but also never really longed for. It is air, it is foundation, it is sand, it is supermodels. It is the way the sun feels slipping through your fingers and the way water feels blowing out your nostrils. It is standing at the top of Mount Everest and discovering the lost city of El Dorado. It is the Loch Ness Monster. It is the moment right after Mount Vesuvius exploded, but right before the people of Pompeii turned to ash. It is the delicious mix of mental ecstasy and physical ecstasy and synthetic ecstasy. It is yachts, and it is fly. So yeah, things were definitely not as advertised. Silver linings, though. At least no one had seen Rafi step in poop. "Hello," a voice called. Rafi turned to find someone rushing toward her. Someone about her age with a pageboy haircut and phone in hand. "Finally, what is the Wi-Fi password here?" "Excuse me?" Rafi said. "You work here, right? In the jungle?" "No, the festival." "Oh," Rafi said. "I don't work for the festival." "But your shirt." Rafi looked down. Her shirt was neon pink with the hashtag Live, Laugh, Fly written across the chest in white cursive lettering. When Rafi bought her ticket to Fly Fest, she realized she had no idea what the appropriate attire was for a week-long music festival in the Bahamas. Her wardrobe consisted mostly of comfortable sweatshirts in varying shades of gray and taupe, but she wanted to blend in on this trip. She wasn't sure her choice of shirt had worked, though. The moment Rafi set foot on the island and saw what all the other concertgoers looked like, she felt instantly different from them. Her black bob with bangs stood out in a sea of flowing blondes and shimmering browns. Even though they were in the tropics, everyone looked so manicured. Not a wisp of hair blowing in the island breeze. While Rafi, in a rush to make it to the airport on time, hadn't put any product in her hair. She hadn't even packed any. Everyone also already looked like they'd made a point to get tanned before showing up, which just made Rafi, who spent probably too much time indoors, feel suddenly Casperish. The pink shirt was the brightest, most carefree, and most expensive t-shirt Rafi owned. When she saw it on the Fly Fest website, she figured it'd be perfect, though now that she looked at it, she saw it for the generic thing that it was, and couldn't be 100% certain that the word staff wasn't written across the back. Looking at her new companion's shirt, she noticed a button pinned to the collar with the words they, them on it. I'm Rafi, by the way. She, her. Her introduction was met by a skeptical look that started at the top of Rafi's head and swept slowly down to her offending shoe. Peggy Yim. Hi, Peggy. I don't work here, by the way. I've actually been looking for someone who does. It's weird, right? That there isn't anyone in charge? She waited for a response, but Peggy was preoccupied with their phone, holding it up to the sky in search of reception. I tried that already, Rafi said. It won't work. I have a satellite phone. I'll get online, Peggy said. It's just a matter of time. You a tech whiz or something? Yes. They offered nothing else, but Rafi liked the short answer. How assured Peggy was when they said it. They were probably one of those STEM coder people who were going to rule the world and knew it. Rafi needed more of that in her life, the boldness, the confidence. She'd come to Fly Fest to be bold, do important things. She suddenly felt bold enough to share something about herself, unprompted. I'm kind of a tech person too. I have a podcast. Rafi paused in case Peggy wanted to ask a follow-up question or maybe murmur their approval, but the only sound that came was the squawk from a toucan flying overhead. Maybe Peggy's silence was their way of telling Rafi to go on? It's called Musical Mysteries. It's about mysteries in, let me guess, Peggy said, music. Right. I already have one season in the can. 8 episodes. It was pretty successful. Never heard of it. Well, successful in the independent podcasting world, it got written up in a few blogs, and Michael Pans called it promising. And he's a contributing sound producer for NPR. So, yeah, I'm proud of it. Peggy kept checking their phone, and although they were walking away wordlessly, they also weren't changing the subject, which was new for Rafi, since at this point in the conversation about her podcast, most people usually did. I'm focusing season 2 on River Stone. Isn't he supposed to be here? Yes! The word came out way too loud, but Rafi was just glad for the engagement. This was officially a two-way dialogue now. Her podcast was a topic of interest, not only to her, but to Peggy, who was clearly a smart and interesting person. Yes, he's supposed to be one of the musical acts, which is why I'm here. Stalker. No, Rafi said, quickening her step to keep up. No, I'm like a journalist. I'm chasing a story, and if I'm right, it could break a lot of things wide open. The girlfriend disappearance thing? Yes, Rafi said. She was pleased that even Peggy seemed to acknowledge how that story seemed implausible and strange, which made it perfect for the podcast. I heard River canceled their trip here, his trip here. Rafi stopped walking. What? All the musicians canceled? The models too? Rafi quickened her step to catch up with Peggy, who hadn't stopped walking and pointing their phone to the sky as though beckoning a higher power. But I'm only here to meet River. Bummer. Peggy's tone did not in any way convey that this was, in fact, a bummer. Maybe their arm was finally too tired, but Peggy put down their phone, letting it bounce against their hip as they leveled Rafi with a serious stare. There is no one affiliated with Fly Fest anywhere on this island. You know what that means, right? Rafi shook her head. We're stuck here, Peggy said. It sounded too heavy, too bleak, and to counter that, Rafi's instinct was to chuckle. We're not stuck here. If the festival really was canceled, then someone would be around to come get them. A boat, surely. Help is coming, Rafi said. A second ago, she wasn't aware they needed help, but now nothing in the world seemed more true. And yet, Peggy did not look convinced. I just hope help gets here before all hell breaks loose. Another thing that made Rafi laugh, though the sound that came out of her throat was more like a toad choking on a fly. Come on, hell breaking loose? Everyone here seems pretty cool. I take it you haven't been to the seaport yet. Chapter 2. When they all disembarked from the ship earlier, it was the seaport that greeted them. It appeared to be the lone human-made structure on the island, the only real sign so far that, before today, other human beings had set foot here. But it was also a sign that someone had abandoned this place because it didn't look quite finished. The building, if you could call it that, was only partially enclosed, with 3 walls and few columns in front holding up a thatched roof. Its wooden beams were splintered, plaster swollen, and chipped. The welcome signs, warped with age and moisture. It looked like someone had plans to make this island a place for visitors, and they started with the seaport, but then ran out of money. Like the building across from the street from Rafi's house back home. It'd been under construction since she was 11 years old, and now, 7 years later, it was still only partially done, with half the walls covered in insulation and the other half a skeleton of steel. The seaport was a promise that someone had taken back. But right now, it could have been a town hall for how crammed it was with angry people. When Rafi walked in, the first person she encountered was a girl who looked slightly younger than her, sobbing. Are you okay? Rafi asked her. The girl looked at Rafi, her eyes twin geysers. The sight of her instantly put Rafi in panic mode, and she did a quick surface check to see if there was something physically wrong. Are you hurt? The girl held up her hands, which Rafi examined for blood or scratches, but they were as pristine as a nail-polish model's hands. Where, the girl began, pausing to take a shaky breath, is, sob, my, gulp, villa? Right. Some people had paid thousands to spend the week in luxury villas on the beach. Rafi had opted for the cheapest accommodation, which the Fly Fest website had described simply as room, but there weren't any rooms that Rafi could see, let alone villas. She didn't know what to say. The girl, exasperated, let out another wail and skulked off to someone else who might be able to help her. But it didn't look like anyone in here could. All around the seaport, people were crying, yelling, getting into each other's faces, asking their own desperate questions. It was discombobulating, and Rafi felt adrift in a sea of confusion. She sidled back up to Peggy like they were a life raft. Someone has to calm everyone down, Rafi said. Maybe you should say something. Me, Peggy said. Why? You're the only one in here not freaking out. Peggy was extraordinarily calm, still looking down at their phone, trying to make it a little less useless. It's a condition I have where I don't care about things. Rafi nodded, though she couldn't tell if Peggy was being serious or not. Their monotonous voice made everything sound sarcastic. But you should definitely say something, Peggy continued. No, I couldn't. On her podcast, Rafi spoke to her listeners with no issue, but that didn't mean she was comfortable speaking in front of a real-life crowd. Especially not one as angry as this one. Without headphones on and a mic in front of her, Rafi couldn't even be sure she had a voice at all. This girl has something to say, Peggy shouted. Turned out their voice could stay expressionless at a much higher octave, which surprised Rafi. But what truly horrified her was that Peggy was pointing directly at her. No, Rafi said, but it was too late. Peggy had already gotten the entire room's attention, and they leached onto Rafi, the force of their questions strong enough to make her back away. Unfortunately, she backed right into the check-in desk at the far end of the room, and it seemed that the only way to get some distance from the increasingly angry horde was to climb onto said desk, so that was what she did. Where is everything? Someone from the crowd yelled. Where is our luggage? Another person asked. The website said there'd be on-site massages. I want a pina colada. Rafi tried to keep everyone calm, but she couldn't even hear her own voice over the din. And then she thought maybe she was the perfect person to talk in front of the crowd because she had just the tool for exactly this situation. She swung her backpack forward and unzipped it, fishing inside for her portable microphone. It wasn't as high-tech as the one in her studio, aka her closet, but it would do. And the great thing about it wasn't just that it could record audio, but it could amplify her voice. She found her portable speaker in her bag too and set it down by her feet, plugging the mic into it with a thick cord. Okay, everyone, calm down. Her voice boomed over the crowd like a heavy blanket over a bonfire, instantly putting out the questions and concerns. She glanced quickly at Peggy, who kept their eyes down on their phone, but still managed to raise a thumbs up in Rafi's way. I'd love to answer all your questions, but I don't work for Fly Fest, Rafi said. The crowd, still silent, looked collectively confused. Are you sure? A voice asked. Why does everyone think I work here? You look like someone who has to work for a living, a boy said. You're like, what, 32? A girl said. I'm 18, Rafi said, appalled. And then she figured it out. It must be the microphone. It was authoritative and adult and impressive. Yes, it was the microphone, she thought. It's your shirt, someone else said. Rafi looked down at her shirt and wondered for the second time that day what it was about the brightly colored, generically hashtagged shapeless tee that screamed staff. This shirt is cute and stylish, she tried to explain. Their confused silence seemed to be gathering strength. Some of them shook their heads to disagree. Rafi pretended not to see those particular people. Look, I might not work here, but I do know one thing. It doesn't look like anybody on this island works here either. Heads began turning, looking at each other as though checking to confirm that no one from Fly Fest was secretly among them, but there were no more bright pink shirts with generic festival-approved slogans on them. Maybe they're coming on a different boat, Rafi continued, or maybe they're on another part of the island and we just haven't seen them yet. Does this other part of the island have the villas? It was the girl who'd been crying to Rafi, tears now drying on her cheeks. The other part of the island has all the yachts, some guy shouted way too confidently. The supermodels are there? Someone else asked. Can I get my pina colada on the yacht with the supermodels? Another person said. Rafi recognized the start of a new angry uprising. She spoke into her mic. I know we were promised yachts with supermodels. Even as she said this, she could see how ridiculous it sounded, how unlikely it was for supermodels to want to party on expensive boats with regular people. But I think we have to prepare ourselves for, my name is Paul, a guy said out of nowhere. He was as tall as a goalpost and looked like the type of guy who played football at Rafi's school. And I only have one question. Is O-Town still coming? My name is Ryan, and I have the same question. Another guy said, is O-Town still doing their reunion concert here? This Ryan person looked almost identical to Paul. Both of them had short, dark hair, square chins, deodorant commercial auras. Rafi felt like she was seeing double, which was disorienting, but not as disorienting as their weird question. I don't know what a ho-town is, she said, but honestly, it sounds kind of sexist. Are you kidding me? Paul said. Do you have any idea who my father is? I don't see how that's relevant. If O-Town canceled, I want to get off this island, Ryan said. Get the boat back. I want a refund, and I'm suing your ass. Like I said, I don't work here. I don't care, Paul said. Rafi glanced at Peggy, hoping for some reassurance, but Peggy only held up their hand again, this time in a thumbs down. So now, not only was she out $2,000 and stranded on an island, Rafi also had a lawsuit on her hands. It would have worried her more if she wasn't distracted by something else. A new group of people was marching toward the seaport from down the beach, a swarm of money and beauty. There was something about them that was different from everyone else. Maybe it was because none of them was currently suing Rafi, but they all looked more dignified, shinier. They were beautiful, and their clothes looked expensive even if the attire was all wrong for the beach. The girls plowed the sand with their heels. They wore crocheted halter tops that were both too much for this climate and not enough to provide cover from the unrelenting sun. Some had ropey bikini tops that looked like overly complex bondage situations and a nightmare for tan lines. And there were way too many of the most maddening clothing of all, rompers. The boys' clothes were simpler, but no less head-scratching in this atmosphere. Designer sneakers and designer oversized sweatshirts and designer pants that got tighter farther down their legs. All of it looked cozy and kind of quilted, and Rafi could only imagine the deluge of sweat streaming underneath all those layers. There was something special about them, and Rafi watched them like she knew them. It took her a minute, but she finally realized that they looked familiar because they were familiar. Rafi recognized them from little stories she'd seen bouncing around the internet, information that she'd come upon largely against her will. Influencers. It was so clear now, as though she could see the blue check marks or large figures that ended in K and M floating above their heads. Rafi recognized the couple who insulted Turkey, the cold cut, the animal, and the country, the boy who adopted 17 puppies and rehomed 16 of them, the girl who came out with a skincare line that got recalled because it mimicked the effects of snake venom, the vegan food guru who accidentally poisoned people with his raw mac and cheese recipe, the crystals guy who started a cult, the fashion designer who started a cult, the fitness girl who started a cult, the candle girl who burned down the West Coast, the guy whose entire life was an elaborate prank, the girl who broke travel bans to fly to 120 countries in the pandemic, the person who went to Uzbekistan to do charity work with earthworms, the guy who started that war using mindfulness techniques. And sprinkled among the influencers was an even more rarefied group of elites. Rafi recognized them because they occasionally popped up in photos with real celebrities. They were practically celebs themselves. Well, celeb adjacent, as in they had the same hairdressers as certain celebs, belonged to the same invitation-only dating apps. They didn't shill anything on their social media platforms because they were already independently wealthy thanks to their parents. They had no scandals to their names or anything even in the neighborhood of discernible talent. But they always seemed to be smack in the middle of the most glittering lifestyles, which Rafi guessed was what drew them to Fly Fest. They didn't look so sparkling now, though. They kind of sparkled from all the sweat, but that wasn't the same thing. At the front of the group, leading them was the biggest influencer of all. Rafi knew Jack Dewey from his makeup tutorials on YouTube. He was pretty. Not pretty in the typical teen heartthrob kind of way, pretty in the toddlers and tiaras way. Like he could have entered a pageant and definitely stolen the crown from a dolled-up 3-year-old. He had red hair that swooped over his forehead and a body as smooth and stick-straight as an eyebrow pencil. He dressed mildly compared to everyone around him. Simple tank top and short shorts, but he didn't need to wear something ostentatious. His face was a real attention grabber. Jack was fully made up, with eyebrows painted in high arches, deep cheekbones cut with contouring, and overdrawn lips. It was a talent, what he managed to do with makeup. Rafi had tried following along in this to his infamous smoky eye tutorial once, but it only made her look like she worked as a professional chimney sweep. When he reached the seaport, Jack stopped, and his gang of influencers stopped behind him. He noticed Rafi right away. Finally, he said, someone who works here. This shirt was for sale on the Fly Fest website, Rafi announced into her microphone in her clearest voice, right next to the wristbands and the mouse pads. And as she said mouse pads, it began to dawn on her that, yep, this festival was a scam. So, who even are you? Jack asked. My name is Rafi Francisco. I mean on social. What's your handle? Oh, Rafi said. Well, you can find me on Twitter under Musical Mysteries is the name of my podcast. I have a podcast. The silence that fell over the crowd was devastating. You could hear a dragonfly buzz straight from the room out of sheer mortification. The quiet stretched uncomfortably long, punctuated by one of the newly arrived influencers swaying and then finally falling face first onto the floor. Is he okay? Rafi asked. He could have heat stroke. Pretty sure it's just secondhand embarrassment, Jack said. He stepped over the collapsed boy to get to the check-in desk and joined Rafi on top of it. I'll take it from here, he said, trying to grab Rafi's mic. But Rafi held onto it tight. This is actually mine, she said. I was just telling everyone we should probably check the whole island to see if there's anyone in charge before we jump to conclusions. I've already been to the jungle, so that's covered. Do you want to team up, head to the other side of the beach? Jack's chuckle hit her like a slap across the face. And go back out in the sun? Absolutely not. I'll do it. Rafi searched the crowd for the person who had just volunteered. There was an odd parting of people backed away to let none other than musical sensation River Stone through. The sight of him, so unexpected, made Rafi lose her voice. Jack was quick to speak for the both of them, though. The three of us will go, yes. Chapter 3. Rafi, Jack, and River walked along the edge of the island. First, the mile of white sandy beach, which eventually turned into rocky terrain and cliffs on the east side. They stayed away from the center of the island because it was a mountain. They weren't too keen to climb. The land was like a bedsheet that someone had pinched in the middle and pulled toward the sky. Rounding that area, they found themselves in a thick forest of jungle, and the whole time Rafi held back, observing. She did a lot of talking on her podcast, but her most important job as an investigator, and she did consider herself an investigator, was to know when to stay quiet and keep her eyes peeled. And that was what she did, now that she had eyes on the River Stone. The one person she was here for. Rafi zeroed in on every step he took. Even though River wasn't singing, it still felt like a concert experience. The oppressive humidity of the jungle mimicked the stuffiness of a performance hall, with every leaf and creeping vine like elbows and shoulders invading Rafi's personal space. When it came to River, though, the plants grazed and glided over his skin, wicking the sweat off him like adoring fans delicately dabbing his brow after a set. Typical. Rafi's silence, she had to admit, was a little bit of the stunned variety. She'd spent all her money to come here and meet River. But now that he was only a few paces ahead of her, she was so shocked to be this close to him that she had no idea what to do or say. Jack knew all too well, though. He walked in stride with River, gushing and asking endless questions. There must be a way for you to contact someone, Jack said. Arrange a pickup? They wouldn't just leave a superstar to die in the wilderness. Does Uber have boats? You know, I actually don't have a phone, River said. I have people who handle all my social media and emails and all that. I like to be off the grid whenever I can. Wow, incredible, Jack said. Rafi could not roll back her eyes enough. At River for having people to do his bidding, and at the idea of Jack believing that a phone-free life was incredible. Is Hella here with you? Jack asked. Hella Badid was River's girlfriend, dating for 2 months. She was a supermodel. In fact, she was one of the supermodels who had been prominently featured in all the promo videos for Fly Fest. When people said they wanted to party with supermodels on yachts, they meant they wanted to party with Hella. Oh, nah, she missed her flight. Probably for the best, right? The words poured out of River's mouth, smarmy as an oil spill. But that may have just been because he was Australian. Like his answer to Jack's question, River may have seemed simple and innocuous, but Rafi could see right through him, and she saw his smile go crooked. It was something she'd observed about him in her research. River had a tell when he was lying, and that crooked smile was it. I only heard that all the other musical acts canceled when I was already on the ship, River said. I knew something was wrong when I got off the boat and there was no one here to tell me where to go. In my industry, you rely on a team. I may have had the #1 album 3 weeks in a row, but I wouldn't know how to get dressed in the morning if I didn't have someone to tell me what to wear. That explained his lack of shirt. Jack laughed and agreed about the industry as though he belonged to the same one. But Rafi couldn't giggle along with him. She saw right through River's humble bragging. He slathered on the charm like it was a bottle of cheap cologne, and he stank of it. Did people really fall for this shtick? His arresting smile, his muscly physique, the way his shiny hair kept spilling over his eyes, and every time he brushed it back with his fingers, it seemed to volumize with so much body that if tiny little people existed, they would take their teeny surfboards and ride those waves into the sunset. The answer, of course, was yes. People ate it up. River had exploded onto the music scene 2 years ago, and he remained one of the most popular pop boys around. And Jack seemed to be falling for him in real time. Rafi noticed he would find any opportunity to casually rest his fingertips on River's forearm. River didn't seem to mind. His forearm had probably felt the touch of a lot of hands. His forearm was a swell, covered in sparse, golden-haired foliage, coming to a point at his wrist, which was slender but strong. From it branched his hand, wide with long fingers. Looking at that hand swinging idly by his hip, Rafi could so easily picture it wrapped around a knife, or a crowbar, or maybe pulling a thin rope taut until there was nothing but stillness on the other end of it. "What smells like poop?" Jack's question shook Rafi out of her reverie, and they noticed that both boys had stopped walking and were looking at her. Jack's nose was tipped up, lip curling as he sniffed. "It's not me," Rafi said quickly. She dipped her right shoe behind her left, hoping the awkward motion was enough to hide the smell that was apparently emanating from her. "I don't smell like poop." "I don't smell anything," River said. "Me neither," Rafi said. "I have a scary good sense of smell," Jack said. "I once smelled the glaucoma all over my great-grandfather. He died 2 days later." He kept sniffing, and no matter how many steps Rafi took away from him, Jack's nose led him to her. Rafi backed away until she backed right into a tree, and there was nowhere else for her to go. Jack bent low, and when he straightened, his green eyes narrowed with certainty. "It's your shoe." Rafi fixed her features until she felt they looked appropriately shocked, then lifted up her shoe so she could pretend to inspect the bottom of it for the first time. "Oh no," she whispered, elongating the small words so it sounded ironically Australian. "I must have stepped in poop." Jack shuddered with disgust. "You just stepped in it? Where did it come from? Did someone just go in the open? We haven't even been here 3 hours and people are already going in the wild. This is madness." "It's natural," River said. "Everybody goes, even me." The conversation was steering in a weird direction, and though Rafi was glad it was in a direction away from her offending shoe, she felt the need to get back on track. I'm pretty sure it was not human poop." Jack snapped his face in her direction. "What do you mean, not human poop? Then what kind is it?" River watched Rafi too, both of them waiting for an answer that she thought was pretty obvious. "Animal?" she said. "Probably a boar." After binging the show Lost a few years ago, Rafi knew that the only things that lived on deserted islands were boars, polar bears, and smoke monsters, and out of the 3, boar was the most likely culprit. "Are you saying there are wild hogs on this island?" Jack asked. "If I wanted to party with wild hogs, I would have gone to my cousin Lionel's 7th birthday. There were 3 tiers of passes to Fly Fest. Rafi had paid for the kind that got you room and limitless water. Jack must have paid for the kind that came with private villas, infinity pools, and no poop of any kind, human or otherwise. "I think we need a change of subject," River said. "I mean, look at this place." He gestured toward the crystal water view shimmering through the trees to their right, the lush jungle to their left, the tropical birds cawing at them from above. It was hot, but there was a strong aroma coming from all around, from flowers or fruit or both. There was nothing but the blue sky, the fresh air, and nature all around them. "There aren't any power lines, no people, no cars, not a single cell tower," River said. "It's a shithole," Jack said. "It's beautiful," River said at the same time. "So beautiful," Jack agreed. River seemed suddenly more interested in exploring the newfound beauty of the island than he was in continuing a straight line down this expedition. He veered deeper into the jungle, following the sounds of birds and the leaves. Rafi kept her eyes on him, intent on following his every move. She couldn't stand to look at him for too long, but she also didn't want to lose sight of him. But when she made a move toward River, Jack blocked her way. "I hope I'm not overstepping here," Jack said, "but I thought I might give you a beauty tip since it's kind of what I'm known for." He unzipped the black leather fanny pack that he wore around his waist and retrieved a tube of shiny lip gloss. "It breaks my heart when I see a girl who's never heard of makeup before. I've heard of, this goes on your mouth," Jack explained slowly, extending the tube to Rafi. "Your lips are so pale I can't be certain you even have a mouth. This gloss is clear, so it won't totally fix the problem, but it's something. And you really need," he looked her over, the expression on his face darkening, "something." "Thanks," Rafi said, though she wasn't sure that was the right word to use. "My lips probably look like this because there's a 95% chance I'm dehydrated." "Oh, I can tell you're thirsty," Jack said. "How many followers do you have?" Instinctively, Rafi turned around to see if anyone was trailing her, but then realized what Jack meant. "Around 500 on Twitter." Jack's eyes narrowed, confused. "Are you like a nano-influencer?" Rafi didn't know what a nano-influencer was, but she was pretty sure she wasn't it. She shook her head. Her answer seemed only to confuse Jack further. "Nobody our age listens to podcasts, unless they're losers or incels." "When do you have time for TikTok?" "I don't." "YouTube beauty tutorials?" Also not. Of course, your whole look is starting to make a lot of sense. As he said this, Jack wiped the sweat off his forehead, unwittingly smearing the penciled-in color of his brows over the side of his face. You've got a little something, Rafi said, gesturing to her own face as a map for him. But though she'd pointed to her forehead, Jack proceeded to wipe the sweat from his upper lip instead, painting a swath of his chin pink. Rafi looked slack-jawed at his multicolored face, but instead of saying anything, she found herself giving Jack a thumbs up. Hey guys, I think I found something, River called. They couldn't see River through the trees, but followed his voice until they were standing right beside him, and in front of an enormous shipping container. Oh, thank goodness, Jack said. Our luggage is here. They'd been informed that their luggage couldn't all fit on the boat that brought them to the island, and so it would be arriving separately. But Rafi never imagined it would be like this. At least they found it. She could finally change out of her Fly Fest staff shirt. River took hold of one door and Jack the other. Together, they opened the container. It was not their luggage.